Today we're going to start Yud Amid Beis. It's sort of in the middle of the page, a little bit below the middle line. It's Tanan Hassam. It was taught over there in a Mishnah, and the side it tells us, it corrects it. It's not really a Mishnah, it's a Tosefta. It's a Tosefta in Kalim, it says. It was taught there, Orha Asla. Orha Asla is a leather seat that's used as, we've had this before, it's used as a toilet seat. It has a hole in the center. What we're learning here, b'chalal shalai, in the hole that's in the center, it's started from b'tefach, combined to be a tefach. Now what's significant about a tefach is a tefach is already considered an ayal, a tent. That means that if there would be a kazayas of a mace underneath the tent, an olive-sized piece of a corpse underneath the tent, so then, and there would be kalim there as well, then they would all become tummy. So what we're learning is that the whole combines to the seat, to be the measurement. Okay. Mayor Asla. What is the Or Asla? Somebody should learn that we're discussing the seat itself. Rashi doesn't learn like that. Rashi's not learning if the seat becomes there. Rashi's learning what's under the seat. What is the Or Asla? Amar Rabba bar Bachana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabba bar Bachana, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, gives us a translation. Ar kisa shel beis hakisa. It's the leather covering of a toilet. The kama. How big is it? Yasser Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, he said, Etzba'ayim mikan ve'etzba'ayim mikan ve'etzba'ayim revach be'emtza. Rav Dimi was a traveler. And he would bring teachings from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. So what he brought this time, he says that the size is 6 tvachim. 2 on one side, 2 on the other side, and 2 finger breadth. It's 6 finger breadth, which is the size of a tefach. 2 fingers on one side, 2 fingers breadths on the other side, and 2 in the center. Kiyasa Ravin came, he came a little later than Rav Dimi. Amar, Etzba mechza mikan, Etzba revach be'emtza. He says that it's 4 finger breadths, 1.5 on one side, 1.5 on the other side, that's 3, plus 1 in the center. 1 in the center is a total of 4. Sounds like there's a machlekes. How big a tefach is. Rabbi Lipsky, you see this? We discussed this before. How many fingers is a tefach? Amalei Abayil or Rav Dimi mi palgisa, are you arguing? One said 6 fingers, the other one said 4 fingers. Rav Dimi said that it's 6 fingers. 2 plus 2 plus 2. So Amalei Lai, he says, no, I'm not arguing. I guess Rav Dimi was still there when Rabin came. It depends which finger we're dealing with. That's what he answers him. If you're dealing with the thumb, then it's only 4 thumbs. If you're dealing with the Zutra says the pinky, I guess, the small finger, so then it's going to be 6. And just for the show you how this works here. We did that already. There's a picture here of a hand. There you go. So 4 thumbs is equivalent to 6 pinkies, and by the way, 5 index fingers. That's how it works out. So that's a share of a tefach. So you can use any finger you want. The question is how many of them. Okay. Amalei le'iye. Laye is an interesting word. I see in the Steinsaltz Gemara that Rashi translates laye as be'emes. In truth, and it would go like this. Amalei la'aye is really palgisu. You argue. Otherwise, he has 2 other translations there. La'aye is also, it's not so. It's also, it could also mean, no, my son. So he brings from, where's he bring this from? The Aramaic loy in the Greek, huos, I don't know how to pronounce, meaning son. The word la'aya he brings from the aruch. It's a compound word. The word la'aya then means no, my son. Okay. He says, la'aya palgisa, you really are arguing. What are you arguing about? Here's what we're talking about. If you have an empty space in the center, and the only way to have more solid than empty space is if you combine the two sides. But one side alone is not bigger than the center. So if you take a look at this, Ravin needed an etzba and a half on either side, on both sides, and one etzba in the center. So he holds that Oimid Merubal aparts Mishteruches doesn't work. He needs to have Oimid Merubal aparts from each individual side. The combination to make more Oimid, more solid, than parrots, than open area, to combine the two, that doesn't work. But according to Rav Dimi, he doesn't have more Oimid on either side. It's equal. We'll see that at the end of the Gemara. But meanwhile, that's what he's saying. He's saying that we are discussing if you need to have larger Oimid on each individual side. According to you, Rav Dimi, yeah, it's a combination of both sides that make it more than the center. But according to Ravin, you need to have more on each individual side, which means 1.5 to 1. So if you're going to tell me that you're really not arguing, Ravin should have said the following. Etzba v'shlish mikan, etzba v'shlish mikan, etzba v'shlish revach be'emtza. If he only holds that it's four tvachim, four etzbais, 4 fingers, which is 4 thumbs, then he could have said, well, instead of saying a thumb and a half, he could have said a thumb and a third on one side, a thumb and a third on the other side, and a thumb and a third in the center. And that would have been equal on all sides. So the fact that he didn't say that, that means that equal on all sides doesn't work. You need to have more oimed. So Rav Dimi responds, Velamai Pilginon. You want to say we are arguing? Look at what's going on. If I hold that you don't need to have more, so on either side, I'm sorry. If I need to hold that I do need to have more on either side, this is, that a combination, that if I hold that a combination works, because he said 2, 2, and 2, so Hachi Balin, I should have said the following. Etzba b'shnei shlishim mikan, a finger in 2/3 on one side. Etzba b'shnei shlishim mikan, be'etzba'ai b'shnei shlishim revach be'emtza, and 2 fingers in 2/3 in the center. If I wanted to reach 6, I could have had less on either side. I had equal on either side. If I would really hold Rav Dimi, it's not Rav Dimi, it's Rav Dimi's bringing from, if according to the opinions that I brought from, hold that a combination of both sides works to overpower the parrots that's in the center, the open area, then I could have really had less on either side. I could have had 1 2/3 on either side. What would that make? 3 1/3. And then I could have had 2 2/3 in the center. And that would make a total of 6. And I would have had less on either side than the center. But the combination of both of them was more. I didn't say that. So I don't hold that Oimid Murbal Aparts Mishtei Ruchos works either. If you want to be medayik from what I didn't say, then go ahead, do it. But I didn't. But it's not going to work out. Rather, he says if you want to say that we're arguing, there's only one slight argument that it's possible. The Paratz Chaimid Palginan, arguing if it's exactly the same, if it's equivalent. Rav Dimi says 2 and 2 and 2. That's going to work, even though the solid area is equal to the area that's in between. I see Dr. Stein's picture. I'm not even going to look at the measurements.
It's not the right numbers. I just want you to know that they figure out things too.
Okay. If it could be equal, so that's a machlaikas. Rav Dimi holds that it could be equivalent, and Oimed Kiparatz would work if either side if both sides are the same measurement as the hole in the center. And according to Ravin, equal doesn't work. It needs to be more. Okay.
Rabbi, I have a question. We're discussing now the holding of Emin Berubal Aparotz. It seems to go against the whole idea of what Emin Berubal Aparotz is trying to accomplish in the first place. So let's say you have a chutzner and you have a bunch of pirtzes in the wall. Are you saying that you have to have at least one section in the wall that's bigger than the parts, or every section in the wall has to be bigger than the parts? In other words, let's say it was 3 and 1. Let's say it was 4 and 1 and 1, or on what? Let's say the hole wasn't in the middle, or whatever. 4.5, 4.5, and 2 and 1.5. Lamazagan. Oh, that doesn't add up. 3.5 and 2 and 1.5. Would that work? Or every single section, unless you say Oimid Kiparatz also works, which is a new chiddush. We never said Oimid Kiparatz. We said Oimid Merubal Aparatz.
It's a machlekes amirayim if Oimid Kiparatz works. I forget if it's Rav Huna Breder, Rav Yeshua, and Rav Papa. It's a machlekes later amirayim, I believe. But wait to Yud Aleph and Mid Aleph and to see about how it works with the chatzar.
Okay, thanks.
I think it'll be a little clear.
Okay.
To clarify these things all the way down is tough, but every daf adds a little bit more. Okay, the next piece. This we learned in the Mishnah. We learned that it's not allowed to be more wide than 10 amas, the entrance to a mavi. If there's a tzuras of Pesach, then that was good. Okay, that's what we learned in the Mishnah. Immediately, tzuras of Pesach, afal pishu rachav niyaser ein tzarich l'maya. That's what we learned. Tzuras of Pesach means a door frame. There's a door frame there, means 2 side posts and a lintel across. Then even if it's wider than 10, it's going to be okay. Ashkechan tzuras Pesach de mahanya berachbay. We've just found that a very wide doorway, that tzuras Pesach is going to help, even though you have more than the shear, you have more than what's really allowed. But a tzuras Pesach sort of gets you in and it kosherizes it. We also learned ba'amaltra the mahanya begava. We also learned that a decorated crossbeam on the top would permit a mavoi that's too tall. That's what we spoke about, an amaltra, some sort of decoration that catches your eye. It's going to work if it's too tall. So we have a way of getting over a wide area with the tzuras Pesach, and we have a way of getting over a too tall with an amaltra. Ibchamai, but what about if you do the exactly the opposite? You do an amaltra for a wide one, and you do a tzuras Pesach for a tall one. So, Tashima, come in here. The Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Mavishu gavayim esr mami yamayif. A mavi that's too tall, you lower it down. But if it has a tzuras pesach, ain't it tzarech l'mayit. Very good. It works. Tzuras pesach works for a mavi that's too tall. Okay, we have an answer. Halfway. We have a halfway answer. A maltra barach v'mayit. What about an amaltra, a decorated crossbeam? Will that work if it's too wide? That we didn't say yet. Tashama, come and listen. Tanya was talking about a brayso mavi shugvayim meser mama. A mavi that's too tall. You mayit. You lower it down. Barachav meyaser. If it's too wide, you mayit. You have to make it less. You have to narrow it by adding more posts to make it. But if it has a tzuras pesach, ain't tzarech l'mayit. So far, no chiddush that we knew already. If a maltra, ain't tzarech l'mayit. As a maltra, you don't need to narrow down the entranceway. Seems pretty good, right? My lava seifa. Are we not talking about the last case that we just mentioned? Last case was talking about when it's too wide. When it says la ya reisha, we're talking about the reisha. It's too high, and a maltra is going to work. If you look at the brayso also, it could have put it together. It could have done that together. It doesn't do that. So it doesn't really hold us to the seifa. It could be taught going back on any case when you say you're repeating the whole halacha. Okay, Masni lo Rab Yehuda l'chiyah barav. I don't know if this was common practice, but Rab Yehuda is a student of Rav. I guess Rav has a student tutoring his son. Good student. Teach my son Chia. He's tutoring his son, and he's Kamei de Rav, and Rav is there, he's listening. Maybe the Chavrusas. He says, Eina tzarech l'mayit. He's learning the Mishnah. We had this before on Daf Beis. He's learning the Mishnah, and it says that if it's too wide, but if you have a tzuras pesach, then you don't have to narrow down the entranceway. Amalei, so Rav pipes up, says to Rav Yehuda, he says, Esnaya, teach it, tzarech l'mayit, that you do need to narrow it down. Interesting. And which means even if you have a tzuras pesach, you still need, and that means a tzuras pesach doesn't help for more than 10 amos wide. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Midivra Rabbeinu Nilmad, what comes out from Rav, that you can't use a tzuras pesach for larger than 10 amos. This would destroy every city Eruv. If you can't use the strings, you would need a pole every 10 amos. Every 10 amos. It would be almost impossible to have an Eruv according to Rav. You'll see it's going to get worse, but just this is pretty tough. Midivur Rabbeinu Nilmad, from the words of our teacher, from Rav, we can understand that chatzashur b'psachim machalenis. Let's say I have a courtyard that's majority doorways and windows. It's nice breeze. There's a lot of openings in it. Ein niteres b'tzuras pesach. It's not going to work with the tzuras pesach. Why? My timer. Hayol v'yoser me'eser yoser b'mavi. Since if it's larger than 10 amos, the tzuras pesach doesn't help, according to Rav. Well, uparitz meruma ala imed yoser b'chatzer. And paritz meruba, if there's too many openings, too many gaps in the wall, in a wall, so it doesn't help in a courtyard. It doesn't help in a mavi either, but it doesn't help in a courtyard. That's Tesis points it out. Well, let's go back to the first case. If it's larger than 10, the tzuras pesach doesn't help. So the tzuras pesach won't help for if there's more parts than Oimid. Just to think about this practically, if you have a city Eruv, it means you have using poles, whatever. Maybe it's the telephone wires or something. If it goes straight over the top, as we'll learn soon, if the wire goes straight over the top, you can use, usually the wires go along the side, which is a problem. But let's say there's a single wire that goes along the top. then you can use those poles. But it's clearly Oimid, it's Paretz Merubal Oimid. There's more open spaces. Now, if a Tzuras Pesach can fill in those spaces, it's considered like a solid, then great. But Rav Yosef comes along and says, from Rav, that just tells me that a Tzuras Pesach doesn't work for more than 10 amas. Therefore, a Tzuras Pesach also doesn't work for Paretz Merubal Oimid. And we're totally finished. Okay. Gemara says it's not a good limit, because take a look at this. What's the comparison here? Well, Tzuras Pesach doesn't work for more than 10 amas, so therefore it also shouldn't work for Paretz Merubal Oimid. 1 second. Mala Yeser Me'eser Ha'eser B'Mavai. More than 10 amas doesn't work by a mavi, even with the Tzuras Pesach. Doesn't work by a mavi. Let's just leave it like that. Doesn't work. Shekin le'yitar t'beitzul pasibi reis l'Rab Meir. Yesterday we learned pasibi reis. Was it yesterday or the day before? We learned about pasibi reis according to Rabbi Yehuda. Pasibi reis is a well that you need to get the water out of the well to allow for the animals to drink. Now, you can't really get the water out on Shabbos unless there's an Eruv there. So well would be Rosh Hashanah, and the area outside is Rosh Hashanah. So what you did is you put up corners on around the well, and that's considered like an Eruv. Taisvis on Daf Zayin says that helps Midei Raisa to make it into Rosh Hashanah. Very interesting. That's considered like 4 walls. So he proves it. He says, how could the Rabbanan allow something that's Midei Raisa Aser? Must be that Midei Raisa really works. It's already, in the Rabbanan just didn't add extra chumras on it. Usually you need a real Eruv, you need walls. But here, to allow for the Oile Regalim, people that are traveling to the Beis of Mikdash, the animals need to drink, so they allowed it. Now, how much area could be in between those corners? So yesterday we learned 13 amas and a third, based on the 4 oxen times 2, and each ox is an amma and a third, I think. 2/3. Each ox is an amma and 2/3. So Reb Meir doesn't hold it. Reb Meir holds it's 3 oxen and times 2, which makes a total of 10. That it's only 10 amas. Okay. So what the Gemara is doing is like this. You're trying to tell me that Oimid Meruba ala Paretz should have the same, Paretz Meruba ala Oimid should have the same halachic status as larger than 10 amas. So let me tell you that it's not so. 10 amas is much worse, which means it's much stricter. You can't get around 10 amas with the Tzuras Pesach, but you can get around Paretz Meruba ala Oimid. Take a look at Pasibi Reis. According to Reb Meir, Pasibi Reis is these corners around the well. How big could it be? Could the space be? Only 10 amas. But let me ask you, is it Paretz Meruba ala Oimid? Clearly so, yes. There's clearly more space than, so you see, Paretz Meruba ala Oimid is much more lenient. It's not as strict as a 10 amas rule. So he's saying, why are you telling me that just like Tzuras Pesach doesn't help for more than 10 amas, therefore it's also not going to help for Paretz Meruba ala Oimid. It's not so. Paretz Meruba ala Oimid is much more lenient, and Tzuras Pesach could help for that. It says, Mali Yisr Miyasr Yisr Mamish Kineitat Beitz Pasuk Reis L'Rab Meir. Timer Paretz Meruba ala Oimid Yisr B'Chatzar Shkeni Hitarteit So Pasuk Reis L'Divrei Akol. Everyone agrees that Paretz Meruba works by Pasibi Reis. So therefore, Tzuras Pesach can take it away, even if there's an issue. But Tzuras Pesach can take it away. So it's not a good limit from there. Lema Messiah. However, the Gemara says, let's bring a support to Rav Yosef that there is a limit, that Tzuras Pesach, a door frame, is not going to be able to. It's not going to be able to remove Paretz Meruba ala Oimid. See if we have any pictures, just to we can clarify this. Okay. This was a decorated Amaltra. We wanted to know if that could work Oh, look, they put decorations along the side as well. Okay. Now we have a chotzer that has a lot of openings. So it's parutz meruba la'imid. We were saying that according to Rabbi Yosef, that's not going to work. There's too many openings. Rabbi Yosef says, and according to Rav, the Tzuras Pesach is not going to take away all of those openings. It's too many. Okay. Take a look at these two pictures here, just so we'll get to that in a minute. See that? It's a door frame that looks like it's not really straight. And here's the door frame that doesn't have a top. Okay, let me We'll see that in a moment. Defane Salalu. These walls, Sherubim Sachem Echalainus. That was that courtyard that we just saw. So many windows and doors. The whole thing is just windows and doors. Mutter, you can carry in there. Parts, as long as there's more standing than open areas. Just 1 second. That didn't sound correct. Sheruban Salkadaita. First you started off saying majority is windows. Then you tell me as long as there's more wall. You can't have two majorities. That's not going to work. Okay. So, it doesn't mean majority. It means that you have a lot. Okay. You have a lot of windows, but you need to have more wall than windows. More windows and doors. Okay. You need to have more standing wall, solid wall than open. Amarav Khan. So, what are we seeing from this? That even though you have Tzuras Pesachs all over the place, window frames, door frames, it still doesn't work. It's a raya to Rav. The way Rav Yosef understands Rav, the Tzuras Pesach isn't going to work. See, our city Eruv has a pole and another pole, and it has a string that goes across the top. That's a Tzuras Pesach. That's a door frame. I mean, it's pretty. The top is pretty weak, but the poles are solid, and that's good enough. The poles need to be strong. The top doesn't need to be strong. That's Tzuras Pesach. If it would just be a kaira, it would be different. So, would that really work? That's what we're saying over here, that it's not going to work, according to Rav. It's not going to work because it's too open. You don't have any walls. The whole city is surrounded by poles and strings. So it's so open. Tzuras Pesach doesn't help. Amar Rav Kana says, no, you have no raya from that brisa. Kitan yehi bepischli shimai. Those are shimai. They're messed up. That's what it means. My pischli shimai. What does it mean? It's messed up. It's not good. So pligi bar Rav Rechumi and Rav Yosef. It's a machlekes between Rav Rechumi and Rav Yosef. Charamar the leslu shikfi. One says it doesn't have shikfi. Shikfi was that picture where you have rocks protruding on the side. It looks like they just broke open the wall and they didn't make the lines straight. They didn't make the doorposts straight. One says it doesn't have a lentil on the top. That's a different story. You don't have really a Tzuras Pesach there. So over there, it's not going to work. You see, all of this was based on an assumption. The assumption was that there was a Tzuras Pesach. So we say the assumption was wrong. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan also holds like Rav. Now, it doesn't say like Rav Yosef. It's like Rav, that Rav said that if it's too wide, the Tzuras Pesach doesn't help. You need to narrow the doorway. Ravin Baravada says the name of Rabbi Yitzchak. Story of a person from this area, Bikas Beis Chorsan. stuck 4 posts into the 4 corners of his field. Then he took a vine. It's a grapevine, maybe. And he spread it across around the posts. Looks nice, a decoration. Story came to the sages. They said this is going to help for Kalayim. Now the rule by Kalayim is that you can, if there's a fence, you can plant one species on one side and you can plant another species on that, and you can go all the way up to the wall if there's a fence there. Chum said this is a wall. You have a wall here. Let's take a look at the picture. See over here. We have the vine going up and it's going around, and you can plant right next to it. You see over here, they're showing you that you can plant 2 things on the side of a wall. Okay. Reish Lakish then says, unbelievable. 4 mamish, 4 walls, totally open. And just a tziras Pesach, just a door frame, a post and a string. Here it's a vine. It's going to be good for Shabbos. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's not good for Shabbos. Understood. Why is it not good for Shabbos? Because it's too much. It's too wide. It's too wide. It's too wide. That's what we're thinking. But what's the case? Maybe we can say that the vine is going alongside. It's wrapped around the post, but it's not like going directly over the post. This slight detail is what affects the city Eiruvin. Because a lot of times you don't have that single wire that goes directly over the poles. You only have the wires that go along the side of the poles. A lot of times. What's the difference, Rabbi Litzker? Is there specifically a wire that's supposed to go over? Or is it a different type of...
No, we'll find out soon.
Okay. So if you say that the vine is going around the side and that's what Rabbi Yochanan is concerned about. Rav Chisda says, it's impossible. That's absolutely nothing. So how could Reish Lakish allow it? Rav Chisda says it's nothing. How could it be even good for Kalayim, maybe? It's 2 gersois here in the Rashi. El al Gavan, it has to be that the vine is going directly over the poles. Ubemai. Now, what's the case? If we say that it's within 10 amas, should be good. Rabbi Yochanan says it's not good. Should be good. It's within 10 amas. It must be that the poles are more than 10 away. It's a raya that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rav, that if it's more than 10, a tziras Pesach doesn't help. Gemara says, Loi. It's not a raya. Loilam Beser could be really, it's 10. Uminatzad, and it's on the side. We said Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda kamiflagi, and that's the machlekes. The machlekes is, do they accept Rav Chisda? Reish Lakish doesn't accept Rav Chisda, and Rabbi Yochanan does. It's Rabbi Yochanan says it doesn't work regarding Shabbos. Rami de Rabbi Yochanan, not the Rabbi Yochanan. Rami de Reish Lakish, we can ask a contradiction. One case is going to contradict both statements here from Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Dam Reish Lakish mishum Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Chanina. Reish Lakish says the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Chanina. Peyam muteres linin kalayim, Avalei Shabbos. Let's take a look. We have a picture here. Here we're seeing minatzad that it's not going over the top. That's what we were talking about with Rav Chisda. Okay. So, hey, over here, it means that there's a so like a woven vine that's going from tree to tree or from post to post. It says this is going to help as a wall regarding kalayim that you can plant on both sides of the wall, up to the wall, even though there's nothing there, but it's considered like a wall. But it doesn't help for Shabbos. Well, that's a problem because Rish Lakish told us before that if it helps for kalayim, just like it helps for kalayim, it helps for Shabbos. That's our first contradiction. Rabbi Yechanan says, Ki mechitzis l'Shabbos delay, kach mechitzis l'kalayim delay. Doesn't help for kalayim either. It's the second contradiction. Rabbi Yechanan told us before, I granted it doesn't help for Shabbos, but for kalayim it helps. Now we see for kalayim it doesn't help either. And it says, well, maybe we can answer Rish Lakish. Bishlam de Rish Lakish, Rish Lakish like kasha hadideya de Rabbi. We have a very easy answer. You notice who said this? Rish Lakish said this in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chanina. Easy answer. Rish Lakish holds that it works for Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chanina, it doesn't hold that it works. It doesn't hold. Holds that it doesn't. He holds that it doesn't work for Shabbos. So hadidei hadirabi. That's sometimes the Gemara answers like that. If you have a contradiction in between a statement of a person, you're like, 1 second, did he say it in his own name or did he say it in his name of his teacher? Oh, he said in the name of his teacher. That's our answer. It wasn't really his opinion. However, Rabbi Yechanan Kasha, we didn't say Rabbi Yechanan says it in the name of anyone. It just says Rabbi Yechanan Amar. It's a contradiction. Does it work for Kalayim or not? Al Gaban. If we would say over there that why does it work for Kalayim? Because it's going over the top. Doesn't work for Shabbos. Why not? Maybe it's like Rav. And it would be a raya because it's too wide and it doesn't help if it's too wide. So hacham min atzad shaper. But over here, it's on the side. Over there, it worked for kalayim because it went over the top. Didn't work for Shabbos, Rav's shita. But over here, why doesn't it work even for kalayim? Because it's going along the side, then it works out. But if you say that really Rabbi Yechanan doesn't hold of Rav, that wasn't our issue before regarding Shabbos. Our issue before was that it was going along the side. Why didn't it work for Shabbos? Because it went along the side, like Rav Chisda says. Ma'ikal Meimar, so it's a contradiction in Rabbi Yechanan. The Gemara says, really, they're both on the side. It doesn't hold like Rav. And nevertheless, it doesn't work for Shabbos in either case, but for Kalayim it would work if it's within 10 amas. More than 10 amas, it doesn't even work for Kalayim. How do you know that there's this distinction? Because Rabbi Yechanan tells Rish Lakish, was it not the story? So halach Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri lil matayra. Rabbi Yeshua, usually it's Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, he went to Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri to study Torah. Even though Rabbi Yeshua himself was an expert in Kalayim, but he went to Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. When he comes to Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri, what do you know? He's sitting by trees. And there's a vine that's going from tree to tree. He says to him, Rebbe, tells Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri, Igafanim kan, Ma'al Israel kan, if there's grapevines growing on this side, can I plant grain right on the other side of the vine? Is this a good machitza? Depends if there's 10 amas from tree to tree. See, there's a difference. The Mayaskinan, what are we dealing with? Ilim al Gaban, if we're talking about that it's going over the top, Yesim Yaser Aser, then if it's more than 10 amos, it's asr va'atanya. But we have a brisa that says, "Hayusham kanim hadrukanim basim lehem peyam el ma'ila fila b'yesem esem mutter." We have a brisa that says that if you have sticks that you're able to stick into the ground, and you put a woven vine across, so even if it's more than 10, it works. So if it goes on over the top, even if it's more than 10 amos, it should work. So it must be that it's not going over the top. Ella lav minatzad. It must be that it's going along the side, which that's a problem. We see very clearly that if it's more than 10, even for kalayim, there's an issue. What comes out over here is that there's three possibilities with the Tzuras of Pesach. The two issues that we're dealing with the Tzuras of Pesach is if it's larger than 10 and if it's going along the side. We said that if it's those two issues, if it's larger than going along the side, that's only an issue regarding Kalayim, but regarding Shabbos, it's not going to work. Even, actually, maybe according to Rish Lakish. No, it depends on Rish Lakish's teacher. Let's say it's less than 10, and it's going along the side, then that depends if the machlekes was regarding Rav Chisda. One we said before. Machlekes Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish is if they accept Rav Chisda, Rabbi Yechon accept Rav Chisda, which means that it doesn't work if it's along the side, and Rish Lakish said that it works. If it's on top, the string is going above the poles, and it's not 10 amos. For sure it works. But let's say it is 10 amos. It's more than 10 amos. It would be our city, Eiruvin. So everyone held that was good except for Rav. Rav holds that it's not good, and Rav isn't the halacha. So our city, Eiruvin, should work. However, there is the opinion of the Rambam. The Rambam holds that if I have paratz meruba, more open space, and as a combination with that, I also have a Tzuras HaPesach that's more than 10 amos, that combination doesn't work. And that's the way the Magen Mishnah explains the Rambam. And when people talk about, the Alter Rebbe Zera or this and that, they're referring to that. I believe that's what they're referring to. That the combination of too much open space together with the poles being more than 10 amos away, which poles more than 10 amos away works because we don't go like Rav. But the combination of too much open space, that's the problem. So in our Erev here, I believe since the majority is actually wall because of the highway wall, we use the highway, the 95. And we also use the canal, which is a real wall, and they just use at least in North Miami Beach, the poles are just used to fill in between. So you don't have a paratz merubah la'imet. You really have majority is solid. That's why this is Miami Beach is probably also like that because they have the bay wall and then you have the buildings, and it comes to a point. So that should work as well, even according to the Alter Rebbe. Even I don't know the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe brings a lot of shittas. Even according to that discussion of the Mishnah and the Rambam, it should work. Okay, let's go further. The film is not halacha. Gufa. We learned before a statement of Amira. That's how we go back to a statement of Amira. We say Gufa. Amar takes us back to re-examine a brisa, a Mishnah. Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda stated. Rav Chisda said, you have a door frame, but you didn't put the lentil over the top of the two posts. You put it on the side. It's nothing. Rav Chisda says, the Tzuras of Pesach has to be strong enough to hold the door. I'm talking about the sides, the post, not the top. Doesn't say it needs to be a metal door. It could be a door that's made out of wicker, but it has to be able to hold the door. It says in the name of Rish Lakish and the name of Rabbi Yana, it needs to have a heketzir. Well, My heker tzir. What is a heker tzir? Heker means a recognizable tzir. Tzir is like a hinge. Amar Rabavya avkasa. Rabavya says what it means is a hole in the ground that you could put the edge of the door so it could swivel, it could turn on that. You could put a little stick in the ground that could hold up the. Let's take a look at the picture. Avkasa. They're pointing out that little hole over there in the ground that could hold. We have that on doors that go both ways, like these kitchens and restaurants or something where they walk in and out, so it swings like that. So that's a avkasa. Ashkechinu Rav Acha Breder Rav Avya Talmidei de Rav Ashi. Rav Acha Breder Rav Avya finds the students of Rav Ashi Amalu. Amar Marmidi b'Tzuras Pesach. Did the master say anything about Tzuras Pesach? Did Rav Ashi teach you anything about it? He didn't say anything. That means that Tzuras Pesach is fine. You don't need any of those conditions. Well, which conditions is he referring to? That's a machlekes rishonim. According to the Rif and the Rambam, you don't need an avkasa. You don't need that hole in the bottom to be able to hold the door. We usually don't have a door anyway. So that's Rav Ashi said you don't need that. Very good. However, the Rashba says that what it means is that it doesn't need to be able to hold the door either. It's a big chiddush. It's a big chiddush that the post doesn't need to be. That's not. I don't think that's brought la'alacha. Usually our posts are strong. They use at least strong enough to hold the wicker door. Tana was taught Tzuras Pesach Shamru Kana Mikan V'Kana Mikan V'Kana Al Gabeim. What is the Tzuras Pesach? The Brisa teaches that it's a post on one side, a post on the other side, and the crossbeam across the top. Tzricha liga ain't tzricha liga. Does it need to reach the top or not? Did the post need to reach the crossbeam? Now, just the practicality of this is what they do with the wires that are going around the city, the electrical wires. If they're going over the middle pole, then Gavaldik, you have an Eruv already there and you didn't even do anything. But usually they're not. So then what do you do? So what you can do is that you can go to the pole, to the telephone pole, and you can add a board next to it underneath. Now that board or that post will go directly under a wire. So if the post doesn't need to reach the wire, then that post only needs to be 10 tvachim. And the wire is way above. And that's considered a Tzuras Pesach. It's a very relevant question that he's asking right there. Can I just take a little PVC pipe, put a little, they call those ties, those, whatever, the things that get very tight, and put it on the telephone pole. No one would even notice it. I mean, you get permission, whatever, but no one would even notice it. And it's directly under a wire. If it doesn't need to reach. This was a question that the Gemara is asking. Rav Nachman Amrein Tzrichen Liga, Rav Sheshes Amrein Tzrichen Liga. Rav Nachman says it's no problem, doesn't need to touch the top. Rav Sheshes says it does. Also, Rav Nachman Vavar the Berish Galusa Kishmaite. Rav Nachman went, it was related, I believe, to the Reish Galusa. Rabba Baravua was his father-in-law, who was involved with the household of the Reish Galusa. And he paskin that it doesn't need to reach the top. He made an Eruv for them. Amalei Rav Sheshes Lashami, Rav Sheshes says to his servant, his name was Rav Gada, Zil Shalif Shadinu, go pull it and throw it down. Throw down the Eruv. Also, Shalif Shadinu, Rav Gada went and he did that. Ashkechu, the Berish Galusa, got caught. The household of the Berish Galusa caught him. Chavshu, they put him in prison. Probably their own prison. Also, Rav Sheshes went come above. He stand by the doorway. Amalei, Gada, Paikta. Says like, get out and come. Like, get out of jail. Nafak Vase, he went out. It's not much of a jail. If you could just walk out. Okay. Ashkeche Rav Sheshes, the Rabba Bar Shmuel. Rav Sheshes finds Rabba Bar Shmuel. Amalei, Tani Marmidi b'Tzuras Pesach. Did the master teach anything with Tzuras Pesach? I think it's referring to him. Rabbi Bar Shmuel. Amalei in. He said yes. Tanina, he taught what's it supposed to be? Tana. Mishnah or Brisa. Kippah. Kippah is an arch. Let's take a look at our pictures and then we'll go through the Gemara. We'll look at all the pictures first and then we'll clarify things. Okay, this is a regular arch, right? That was our question. Did the posts need to touch the top? Here we have an archway. Okay. Let's see what our issues are. Well, an archway needs to be 10 tvachim tall. It needs to be 4 tvachim wide. Well, here it starts to the incline, the bend in it starts below the 10 tvachim. Here in this doorway, I have 10 tvachim to the top. I have 4 tvachim across. I have 3 tvachim raised above the ground before it starts to go together. But I would be able to carve out, because it's so thick, I'd be able to carve it out. A 4 tvachim all the way up to the top. All the way up to 10 tvachim. Over here, I won't be able to carve it out. Okay, let's go through the Gemara. We'll see all of these options, how it's working. Kippah, an archway. Meir says an archway needs a mezuzah. The Chum say that an archway does not need a mezuzah. B'shavin, however, everyone agrees that if the door frame has 10 tvachim straight posts along the side, and then it's an arch over the top, that it's chayiv b'mezuzah, because that's a straight wall. For the 10 tvachim, it's chayiv mezuzah already. So where's the machlekes? Everyone agrees. Amar Abaya, hakol maidim, everyone agrees, im goiva asara v'im b'raglah shleisha. If it's 10 tvachim tall, but the base doesn't have 3 tvachim, that it's pater b'mezuzah. Inami yesh b'raglah shleisha v'im goiva asara. V'lei klum. Or, if it doesn't reach 10 tvachim, everyone agrees that there's no requirement for a mezuzah. Keep ligi, where's the machlekes? Because we just limited this very, very much. Keep ligi b'yesh b'raglah gimel g'vaya asara ve'in rechav arba v'yesh balachik lahashlim al arba. Machlekes is only in one case. Machlekes is that the archway only begins after 3 tvachim raised off the ground. From the distance from the top to the bottom is 10 tvachim. And I'd be able to carve out of the archway 2 straight walls of 10 tvachim. That would be 4 tvachim across. The question is, do I say chaykikin lahashlim? Do I say that you can imagine that it would be carved out? And that's enough. That imaginary carving is good enough to make it like there's a door. And the fact that it happens not to be carved out doesn't affect. Rameir said chaykikin lahashlim. Rameir said it's chayiv b'mezuzah. Rabbanan sabri in chaykikin lahashlim. Rabbanan say that it doesn't need to be, that you don't carve out. What we're seeing from here is that, let's take a look at this again. What we're seeing is that the wall doesn't actually need to touch the top. Because where's the top? That's the top. The wall is down here. We're seeing that there is a top. There is a top, but the top doesn't really connect to the walls. Let's say this case. Let's take picture 151. I have a 10 tvachim wall, and I also have a flat top. I have a flat top, I just have to carve it out. Now, where's the flat top? Well, somewhere up there. So whatever the case is, the defanis don't need to reach the gag. The kana mikan doesn't need to reach the kana shal gabeim. Amalei, Rav Sheshes says, if you find the I was supposed to read this. What's the other? I have to put that together. If you find the people of the house of the Reish Galusa, so I'm correcting it according to Bach. Do not tell this to them. Don't tell them anything about this Mishnah of Kippur. Rav Sheshes is saying, because Rav Sheshes tore down their Eruv thinking that it wasn't good, comes along Rabbi Bar Shmuel and brings a raya from this Mishnah or Brisa that it is good. He says, don't tell the house of the Reish Galusa about this, the Pshat in this Mishnah.
So was that with those little poles, that type of Eruv good?
Yeah, if you put a pole underneath,
yeah,
and it doesn't reach the string on the top, they do that. They use that. Where's the halacha? Yeah, I don't have which siman it's in, but I know they use that.
No matter how high, as long as the pole's that certain height, no matter how high the rope is above.
Yeah, did we say a Tzuras Pesach helps if it's above 20 amos? I think we said that. I think we said that that's going to work. I don't know if that's I think that works. Yeah. Yeah, there is a place even here in I forget which post Rabbi Selmar told us about one piece near the highway that they use a pole that's underneath it. It was amazing, Ahmed.
Yeah.
a lot going on. Okay, have a good day, everyone.